Hello, this is Deanna Laird with Accounting Fly, and joining me today is Chris Lezovich with the IRS to talk about the timing process for recruitment with the government. This is the second in a series of information about accounting careers with the government. We have a recorded session that you can look at a later time about a variety of career opportunities, what the government really kind of offers for accounting professionals. And that was done a few weeks ago. Chris joined us for that one as well. And then in this webinar, we want to take get a bit more tactical in the information that you're going to hear and tell you about some of the specifics that you should be aware of in looking for a job, from signing up, applying, and then how you're viewed as a candidate. So there's, again, like I said, it's some very tactical advice that's going to be given today, some things that you're really going to be able to act on that Chris is going to share with you. So I welcome you, Chris, and thank you for being with us. And a little bit of background on Chris for you all to know is that he's been with the IRS for over 25 years, and he served in the capacity there as both an auditor and then also in recruitment, and where he now resides, and he's the national recruiter for the IRS currently. Additionally, Chris has been an adjunct professor specializing in taxation for over 10 years, and he's also been instructor for the Becker CPA review course. So a lot of experience and advice, tips for you to utilize when you're looking at opportunities with various agencies in the government, including the IRS. To start off, I am going to launch a poll because Chris and I would like to get an idea of your level of experience. Okay. So once this poll appears, if you will indicate whether you're currently a student, whether undergraduate, master's, whether you're maybe a recent graduate and you are just starting your career, or you might have over 2 years experience, less than 5, or 5 or plus years. So go ahead and let us know your background, and that will help, I think, Chris gauge an understanding of who you are and help to give the advice that's directly applicable to the situation you may be in. Okay, I'm about to close the poll. And so we have a pretty nice dispersion of those of you across undergraduate students and then master's students. Those combined make up about 28%. About another 27% are accountants recently graduated 0 to 2 years, so at the entry-level stage. And then a great, nice number of experienced level accountants. So 17% with 2 to 5 years of experience and 26% with 5+ years. So that's great. I'm glad that we have such a nice variety in our audience, and we certainly welcome you. Throughout this webinar, we will be collecting questions from you. Use the question panel in the webinar tool to send me what you want to hear about, okay? And at the end of the session, we'll hold a Q&A session, and I will pose the questions that you have to Chris. All right. So with that, Chris, I want to go ahead and hand it over to you. I'll come back on at the end of the session with those questions and also give a little bit of some exciting highlights that are happening here at Accounting Fly, and to hopefully help you, continue this journey of being the best accounting professional. All right, Chris, it's all yours.
Thank you, Deanna. First of all, I am broadcasting over a new phone system, the voice over internet. So if you have pauses in there, I sincerely apologize for that. When talking to Deanna, we found that there was a need for a potential need for those folks that were not familiar with the application and hiring process of the federal government, they may be familiar with, trying to get a job in the private sector or, an accounting firm, but not necessarily perhaps with the federal government. So I welcome this opportunity to partner with Accounting Fly so we can show you a little bit about the federal process, because if you're not familiar with that, that can be extremely frustrating because it's substantially different than what you may be familiar with. So in this presentation, we'll talk about, if you ever want to consider working for the federal agency, not just the IRS, but this might be a useful tool. And although it's kind of catered toward the accounting career, it can be applicable for other facets of that. So as we begin, we're going to start off with also another poll and to see if anybody has ever applied for a federal job. You might be familiar with the website USAJOBS. So we'll take a moment and record your comments or tally there.
Okay, the votes are coming in, and I'm going to close it. Thank you, everybody. And ironically, we have a 50-50 split. So 50% of the audience has applied for a federal job previously, and 50% has not.
So excellent, because we'll touch on not only to get you familiar with the application process, but also provide some suggestions which may increase your potential of landing a career with the federal government. So as we go to the slide, we talk about the hiring process, the difference between the public sector, the federal government, state government, or any local municipalities, and the private sector, whether it be an accounting firm or a mom and pop family business or a Fortune 500 company. One of the questions as a recruiter is that, hey, can you help? I'm a recruiter. Well, can you help me get a job? If you approach that as through the private sector, that might be useful. However, in the federal hiring process, as we go to the next slide, we have different roles right there. So what a recruiter, as a national recruiter, one of my function is to guide people and to let them know about job opportunities that are currently out there. And so all the way up to when the applicant actually applies, I'm involved with that, guiding them to the job announcements, answering particular questions. However, once they submit the application, specifically once the deadline occurs for accepting applications, I am not involved at all. To kind of protect the privacy of the candidates, there's a small number of people that are actually privy to your application file. So within each job announcement that you apply for, again, all the jobs are applied online, we'll get to that shortly, there is an agency contact person or federal or personnel department. And that contact information is listed inside the announcement itself. That is the person or personnel staff that can answer your specific questions regarding the status of your application or what's going on along the hiring process. That whole hiring process, generally speaking, there are so many different variables in this, but generally speaking, you can expect maybe a 3 to 4 month process from when you actually applied, or specifically when the deadline, to when you're actually hired. So that's a long process, which is, again, substantially different than that in the private sector. So so just kind of be aware of that. Again, the contact person would be the agency contact individual listed in the announcement itself. Lastly, once all the information is collected by this agency contact person, an HR specialist, then that information is forwarded to what we call a regional hiring coordinator, and that hiring coordinator, he or she will actually make the announcement, or actually make the offer to the various candidates. So that's a little bit of the time frame and the roles that individuals play in the federal hiring process. Now, as we go to the next slide, there we are. All the federal agencies are posting their jobs to USAJOBS.gov. This is a website that is run by the Office of Personnel Management, and every federal agency basically posts their jobs there. Now, each agency has their own hiring database, and a lot of times you're not even aware of this. And for example, in the Internal Revenue Service, our hiring database is called the Career Connector. So if you see something regarding Career Connector or correspondence, it is coming from the, in this case, the Internal Revenue Service, but it is all part of the behind-the-scenes database. And so again, you're not going to be aware of that, but just in case you see something like that, just say, wait a minute, I thought it was in USAJOBS. Well, there is a, that's sort of the umbrella that houses, the hub that houses all the different federal hiring databases out there. Within USAJOBS, as we go to the next slide, we have there's basically a six-step process, and again, for those that have already applied, you're probably well familiar with that, so bear with me. Basically what we're doing is, again, all the jobs are created online, so we have to create an account. This is a very simple process. Once we create an account, we associate a resume to that account, and then we end up searching for a particular job announcement. So once we look for that job announcement and they say, hey, you want to apply, what's your username and password? We enter that. It retrieves your information from your account and your resume, and it automatically uploads it to the application itself. Once you apply for a job, you may or may not go to that individual federal database, their hiring database. And with the IRS, you're going to be directed to Career Connector, and then you're going to, and it's going to automatically upload your account information, but basically you're creating another account for within that database. Once you create that account, you actually apply for the vacancy, and then you have the opportunity to submit various documents, whether it be a license, a CPA license, or unofficial transcripts, or things like that. So we're going to go in a little bit detail about that and show you some hints, tell you some information. So in the next slide, we began with basically what we're doing is going to the website, USAJOBS. We're going to create an account, upload, build a resume, and apply for the jobs online. It's kind of the general approach that we're going to do. So the next slide is a snapshot of the USAJOBS webpage, home webpage. And folks, this web pages and the various other web pages are constantly changing, constantly being updated. The current one may not look similar, or it will look similar, but not exactly like the slides that you're being shown today. So on the upper right-hand corner is where you create an account. We just go to the next slide. We'll go through a lot of this. I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but just go through a lot of this, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So in the USAJOBS account, where you build or upload your resume, got that slide right there. You notice that you have the option. So once you create an account, the whole creating an account is about less than a 2-minute process. Username, password, and basically contact information. Email is the most common thing. Once you create your account, you are directed to the account page right here. And you have in the, I guess it'd be the upper left-hand corner or the lower left-hand corner, an opportunity to build a resume or upload a resume. There are some agencies. So the easiest thing most people do is, hey, I got a Word document, it's my resume, I'm going to upload it. Boom. The IRS about a year and a half ago did not accept uploaded resumes. So if you're applying for a job and you had an uploaded Word document, it would not accept it. You'd have to actually build a resume. Build a resume is the OPM version of a resume that's consistent with all job announcements that are posted on USAJOBS. People ask me, what would be my preference? I understand it's a lot easier just because you already have documents to upload it. And a statistic I'm just making up, probably 95% of the time, it's okay. If you want to build a resume, so probably a little bit more in detail, you can cut and paste from a Word document to a particular question, but not multiple questions at one time. I'll let you know that. Let's go to the next slide. When you build a resume, you got your basic stuff. I'm not going to really go through it. You know, it's just they go through each step and ask you questions, give you a large block of text box that you can fill in, and it's pretty self-explanatory. But it can take a long time. So one of the things with federal jobs when you apply for it, there's a lot of upfront time that's involved, but the actual application process is generally fairly easy. So one of the time-consuming elements of this is building your resume or getting your account all established, creating a resume or building a resume itself. Or I'm sorry, uploading a resume. So the next document talks about saving documents. Now, when you are applying for a job, there's multiple ways to attach information, whether it be a cover letter, transcripts, license, and things like that. You can create it within the USAJOBS account. You can create it within the local federal agency account. And then lastly, if neither of those have been done, you can also create it or upload it during the application itself. So kind of keep that in mind. My preference is that if you have transcripts from school, I'd upload it into your account so it's always there. You're not going to do that for every application itself. When you talk about transcripts, it's okay at this point to do unofficial transcripts, something you can download from the school website, because during the hiring process, when they do background checks, that's when they're asking for official transcripts. But at this point, they're just trying to determine your eligibility for the position itself. So unofficial transcripts is okay at this point, and that's what's actually recommended. So we'll go to the last slide. Here's kind of the basic thing when you're searching for current jobs. So the website allows that, hey, let's see what current jobs are available. If the jobs are accepting applications, it will be posted on USAJOBS. If the job is closed, it's past the deadline, then that job falls off that website, at least being viewed by the members here. So we're going to go through a little things here, a few things and a few hints. So this is where those folks that have applied for a federal job may find some hints that may be beneficial to them. When you go to the website, I would always suggest an advanced search, because this way, sometimes there could be 3,000 or 30,000 applications out there. So you don't want to view all those. So let's narrow down the search to get the jobs that pretty much that you can just qualify for and view those particular jobs. And it's a lot easier for everybody, I guess. And it substantially reduces the frustration too. So go to an advanced search, and again, advanced searches gives you the opportunity to set the applicable parameters that you want to search for. One of the things you may want to do is the occupational and job category tab. Each federal job has civil federal job has obviously a job title. That's called occupational series, or I'm sorry, called the job category. And they also have a 4-digit job series number. The first 2 numbers is the general category. For example, all accounting positions are going to begin with 05. Last 2 numbers is the specific job within that category. So a 00 is going to incorporate all accounting positions and finance and budget positions within the 05 job category. So for example, it says all the accounting, finance, and budget equals, it's the job series number 0500. So you can search by jobs by just that category, and thus you're not going to get, those, geology positions searching the beaches of Waikiki, because we really don't want to even consider those jobs there. If you are limited to a location for whatever reason, family, medical, personal preference, then you want to select your location, whether it be state, region, or a particular or a series of cities. You can put your location in. Again, if you are only looking for jobs in Florida, then putting that parameter in, then you are substantially reducing the number of job announcements that meet that criteria. And this is probably one of the, especially for those folks that are looking for an entry-level position, this is probably one of the best parameters to do. It's called a pay grade. Matter of fact, let's go to, in the pay grade, if we go to the next slide, it breaks it down a little bit of the pay scale. Most jobs are under the general schedule, federal jobs, it's called the GS schedule, and you'll see the position itself at various GS levels. So if you're looking for an entry-level position, it's basically going to be a GS 7 or below. There are some exceptions. It could be a GS 9. And then you'll see the mid-level and top level based upon the number of experience that you have. So if you are just getting out of school, currently in school, and you have basically no work experience, then if you want to set your parameters for the pay grade based upon the educational and location indicated below, then that will basically give you jobs that you're substantially likely to qualify for. So if you have if you're in your master's degree, then if you do let's say your top level, you could qualify either for a 7 or a 9. You may want to do a parameter of 5 through 9. And then that way, those type of positions considered entry level would be jobs that you may want to consider. So that's a great way to reduce the number of job announcements that are out there that you have to filter through to see which ones that basically do you qualify for. So lastly, in the next slide, the last tab in the advanced search has a thing called who may apply. The default is at no. And what that means is that these are positions, these are job announcements that are for the general public. Every agencies, where they're internal positions, whether it be a lateral transfer or a promotion, they're also going to post their jobs on USAJOBS. So if I'm looking for a job myself personally, and for a promotional job, I'm going to look for an opening on USAJOBS and look for an open job announcement and apply like everyone else. So when they say who may apply, if you're currently not a federal employee, looking for a job within that agency, then I would leave it as no. You get all these jobs that are going to be available. Otherwise, you're available for, in our case, IRS employees only. Only the agency employees only apply for those jobs. So you go, oh, that's a great job. However, I'm not eligible because I'm not a current federal employee. There are some jobs that are under status, and that can be either internal or external. Again, they're going to show up, and these are jobs that even though you may not be a current employee, you may be eligible for, and these generally fall under for veterans preferences or perhaps those that are disabled candidates that may qualify for some of that. That's just generally some of those categories right there. So let's kind of just hop right into the job search. Hope we're doing okay out there. We're going to fly by a few of these things here. And this is just, let's say, obviously it's pretty self-explanatory. here's a summary of the jobs you qualify. You click on the hyperlink of the title itself. It's going to populate the job announcement itself. If you go to the next page, here is a sample of the job announcement. A couple things that I really want to emphasize. This is a slide that, for everybody, I think is probably a comment that could be perhaps the best advice of this webinar. You notice the tabs? There's generally about 5 tabs: an overview, duties, qualifications, blah, 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 and benefits, and how to apply those things like that. The key tab, and this is the key, one of the key advices that I'm going to present to you today, is the duties. Each job is going to have a list of duties. I strongly suggest, when I talk to the people that are doing interviews and ranking candidates and applicants, that, of course, they're the same things here, that they're looking at the duties. Have you commented on each aspect of the duties? It says, the comments can be either, based upon your education, you took a class, based upon experience. I did a workshop, or I did something at a family reunion. I did something with a church organization. I did something with scouts, or a combination thereof. So work, experience, or education. They're trying to assess you as the applicant on, do you have the elements, the basic elements for this position? And so we're going to get in a little bit later that in the ranking part is that they basically are giving you a number ranking. You got a certain score, your final application, and the ones with the highest score are going to be the ones that will be considered for an interview. And each duty, in general, has a ranking between 1 and 5. So if you address that, you may get 2, 3, 4, or 5 points. If you don't address that duty, you're going to get 0 points for that element. And so you could have a candidate that there's 5 duties, and they are excellent. They get 5 ranking on 3 of them, but they don't address the other 2. They're going to get scored, say, 15 in that aspect. You have someone who just gets 3s and 4s on all 5 of them, and they're likely are going to have a higher score than the other candidate. So that's something that you may not be aware of. So that's probably one of the biggest advices I can get you to increase your odds of being selected for an interview. So again, duties, look at the duties, address each element the best you can. Be creative. The more specific your examples are, the better it is. They like details. This is where I would strongly suggest you put your most effort in when applying the job. Next slide. Again, you're going to apply online. It's pretty simple right there. Now, so you filled out the basic information. Now you're going to be directed to that agency's website. They're going to ask you specific questions about the job itself. And so you may be directed, in this case, you're going to be directed to the IRS one, and that's called Career Connector. I'm not really going to go through a lot of this. Again, self-explanatory, but a couple things I want to let you know. Most of the information that you applied in your account is automatically transferred to your new account. If you have anything to add, if you look at the next slide, you can add things such as your military service, some demographic information, some additional questions on resume information, perhaps bilingual skills and stuff like that. You can add to your skill set right there. But basically, they automatically populate that information from what you created in your prior account, and then you have a chance to add more detail. A lot of times it's going to be your various experiences and stuff like that. Next slide is, again, kind of self-explanatory. Let's go to the next slide where it talks about complete all 5 sections. Again, you're going to complete, you're completing the specific application for that agency, and this is the part where it's doing it. You're not really going to notice it because it's just going to go next screen, next thing you have to file. But it will automatically, when you complete that, you automatically get to the end of that. If you look at the next slide, now this is one thing that we've had individuals that have gone through the whole thing. Listen, I applied, I get to this particular screen, and it says submit, and well, I apologize. You're going to hit, I think next is it, and then you complete this. And then what it does, when you complete the agency's application, it's going to redirect you to USAJOBS. Excuse me. Some people will turn off the computer and say, I've applied. Until you get back to USAJOBS and hit the submit button, your application has not been accepted. So not a lot of people have a problem with that, but we have seen some of that experiences where they logged out of their application process a bit too early. One other thing is, on the next slide, it talks about the deadline. All deadlines are based upon Eastern Standard Time. And at 11:59, not midnight, 11:59 p.m., that's when the application must be completed. No other information will be accepted after that time zone, after that time. And so if you're in a different time zone, understand it's all based upon Eastern time zone. In the next slide, what happens if you apply and like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot something. I want to add something. I remember a particular experience that I had. I think it really applies to this position. I want to add that to that. So as long as the deadline is not applied, has not passed, you can actually go and update your application. If it's something on the resume itself, you go into your resume, you update the resume, you go back into the application itself as if you're applying for the first time. You'll see all your answers that you have previously submitted. You can make your changes. Once you select the resume, it's going to upload the new resume. Whenever you go to the application again, it's going to ask you to upload the resume. So that's just why I uploaded before. Well, if you wanted any new information, and you've amended or edited your resume that you want to consider, then edit your resume, go into the application as if you're going to apply again. And since it's not past the deadline, the application's right there. You put in your username and address, or username and password, and it says, oh, you've already applied. Here's your answers. It's going to ask you which resume you want. You select that, and then you can go into the actual questions and edit anything that you want at that time. Again, and then when it's all done, you end up submitting, and then you submit your application. Nothing is going to happen until after the deadline, as far as correspondence on whether or not you're eligible or not eligible. So, next slide. Once you've applied, there are certain positions that require an additional assessment. So the application is the basic qualification. Are you eligible, yes or no, for the position? That's kind of what we've just gone through. The actual assessment is going to be, how are we going to score you? How are we going to rate you? What's the ranking involved? And once that is done, then the selection of who they're going to be interviewed, who's going to be interviewed for the position occurs, if interview is an element of the selection process. So one other thing, look at number 2 right there. They talk about candidates are placed in one of 3 categories, either an A category, B, C, or deemed ineligible. How this works is that when they're selecting positions for an announcement, they're going to look at the highest scores, with very few exceptions, highest scores within the top category, A category. What happens if there are more positions available after all the A category candidates are selected? Then they go into the B category, the top ones in the B. If the number of positions available is still unfilled, they will go down to the C. So if you receive the C, you're going to have to go through all the candidates who received an A or B ranking. The total number of candidates, total number of applicants in each pool is generally not available to the public. And so you can ask the agency contact person or personnel they may be able to provide you some additional information, but that's their call. It's but you generally have to wait. You have to wait and figure out what the status is going to be after that, whether or not you were selected. But just let you know about the A, B, and C ranking right there. Let's kind of go into the assessment itself. So in the assessment, I'm just going to fly through a bunch of these, just the variety of different assessments as associated with several particular positions with the IRS. At the end of this, we're actually going to do a sample of an actual question and just see how you feel, just see how you're doing, how you would, what answer you would select. And I will comment on that and tell you the rationale of what's a better answer and what is an answer that may not be the best choice. So that's coming up there. So the basic different assessments is a job simulation. This is generally going to be an online simulation. It's going to represent your job itself. You know, we'll go into a little bit more detail of that, but this is role playing in essence. Sometimes an assessment would be creating plans. You know, this is a lot for teachers. You know, you got a planning calendar for your course. They want you to create that. That's generally not applicable in the accounting positions. Situational judgment. We see a lot of these. These are multiple choice questions. You know, what's the best choice given a scenario of that? So I'm going to apologize. I've actually, my sample is going to be with a situational judgment. And of course, interviews, a big category of the assessment is how well you do in the interviews. Some people, we've had people who have done excellent in all the other aspects, but they were like maybe second or third in the interview, and they got selected as the #1 choice because of the accumulated score in the other areas. There are occasions there might be a multiple choice test, and that's called an accounting test. Very rarely are they going to ask you for your competency, the technical thing of an accounting position. If there is a situation, there's an accounting position, and you haven't had enough educational work experience, they may have you take an accounting test to see whether or not you're going to be qualified for the position itself. It doesn't happen very often. It's only in a few jobs. Occasionally they might do that accounting test. Some positions, for example, maybe an attorney position, might have some written assessments as well. So those are kind of the variety of different assessments. Occasionally, some of the assessments will be embedded within the application itself. We used to do that as an agency, some of the positions, but now we have taken that all out of the application process and tried to make it as simple as possible, and then do the assessments after the application deadline has passed. So let's go through just a quick oversight of different types of an assessment that's affiliated with different jobs. For example, in the assessment process, in the next slide, we're going to talk about the Internal Revenue Officer, which is a collection officer. We'll also talk about the Tax Compliance Officer. It's really kind of complicated, but that is a sub-component of the tax examiner. On the application itself, it's going to be listed under Tax Examiner. Within the details, they're going to say a Tax Compliance Officer. So these are auditors who are actually doing audit, but they're going to reside within the IRS office itself and have clients come to the office themselves. Now, a more common and most popular position is the Internal Revenue Agent. This is a job that I had for many, many weeks in my career. Okay, years. Okay, about 20 years. These are the field auditors. These are the auditors that are actually going out to the place of business that are conducting the audits, the interviews, and the conclusion, basically in the field. So this is a one that probably has, and the revenue officer probably has the better career advancement potential. So real quickly, on the revenue officer, the collection officer, you look at this slide, they're going to do what they call a revenue officer self-assessment. It's called a ROSA, okay? It consists of situational judgment items, such as, what would you do? Maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 questions, multiple choice questions. What would you do in this case? What would you do in this case? And of course, an online simulation. Afterwards, they can find that score and determine who's going to be interviewed. And once the interview is done, then they make the selection. The next slide is more for your information reference of how the process works. You can refer to that at a later time. The next slide talks about the tax compliance officer. And again, it's the situational judgment, online simulation interview. Different types of questions, different types of scenarios, but it pertains to the job itself. Again, the next slide talks about the flow of the chart of that. We're not going to go into detail on that. And finally, we'll get to the revenue agent assessment process. Now with this one, we're going to do the job simulation. Now, I think with the revenue agent, you may have two different scenarios, two different job simulations. And then based upon that, in your application itself, and transcripts and everything, all the related documents, they'll determine who will be selected for an interview. The next slide is just a flow through of the whole process. And let's go to the next slide where it talks about a situation. Okay, folks. Okay, we're getting literally close to the sample. So get ready here. Situational judgment. Okay, what if? These are multiple choice questions. What are you going to do in this scenario? So it's you are put in a position where you are asked to make a decision based upon your role. In this case, the revenue officer. Again, that's the collection person. They do a lot more, but that's the general role. They're going to have a scenario, and you're going to ask to make a choice on what would you do. So let's go to the next question, and this is a poll. So let me just read this and have you. And this is a sample of an actual question that was used. So. Apologize here. So, you visit a tax. I'm going to read this here, and then I'll give you a chance for select your choice here. One of four choices here. You visit a taxpayer's residence for the purpose of seizing her personal vehicle. You seize the vehicle, which is now deemed the government property, to proceed to call a tow truck. When the taxpayer advises you that she would like to drive the vehicle to the storage unit, as she cannot afford to add the tow charge to her tax debt, what would you most likely do in this situation? So in the poll, one is that you accept the taxpayer's offer and let her drive the vehicle to the storage unit. Number two, release the seizure and consider other options. 3, contact your supervisor for advice. And 4, call the tow truck and finish executing the seizure. Take a moment to make a selection.
I'm going to give it a few seconds.
Deanna, let me know. Okay.
Okay, I'm about to close it, guys. Put in your answer. All right. Okay, so 1% selected accept the taxpayer's offer and let her drive to the storage area. 3% chose release the seizure and consider other options. 22% would contact their supervisor for advice, and 73% would call the tow truck and finish executing the action.
Okay, well, great. I appreciate your participation in that. Let me go through the answers and tell you so in this particular choice, as with these type of situations, every question is going to be, let's say, it gives a grade. There's no wrong answer. First of all, In any of the simulations, the job situation, any of the assessments, there is no wrong answer. There are some better answers, and in scoring, when they score a test, so to speak, you know, there may be two answers may be allocated as 0. One answer may be given 1 point, and the best answer may be given 2 points. That's kind of how it works. So let's go through the scenario. Accept the taxpayer's offer and let her drive the vehicle to the storage. Now, the good news with this choice is that you're trying to minimize the tax burden for this particular individual. Okay? You're trying to say, hey, I understand. We don't want to add it up, and I'm making a choice of adding more to your debt there. However, this probably would not be a good choice, because the key thing in this case, the second sentence, you seized the vehicle and is now deemed government property. So you are in control, and one of your responsibilities is to contain control of government property. By letting her drive, you are releasing control of government property. And so that would not necessarily be the best choice. In the second one, release the seizure and consider other options. Here you're trying to come up with a win-win situation. You know, let's come up maybe another way of trying to accomplish both things. Perhaps not the best answer, because you're already out there. You're trying to do your job. So, you know, are you going to continue doing your job? Again, there might be a better choice here. A common answer, and this is a choice that you'll see quite a bit in all these different scenarios, is contact the supervisor for advice, because the supervisor is going to know what to do. And maybe you're new and you've never experienced this situation. You want some guidance. Not a bad rationale. However, one of the things they're looking for is not only good customer service, it sort of addresses in the first two, but also the ability to make decisions. And so, by selecting the third choice here, this indicates the possibility with the scenario is that this may be something that maybe you're a little hesitant about making a decision. Whereas number 4, you're basically, you listen to the person, you're making a decision, and you're following through your job. But you're not necessarily being hard-nosed, and there's going to be other questions where you're going to have maybe all 4 of your choices that you're making the decision, but there's different ways of maybe they're addressing customer service. You know, something where you come to see a vehicle, and maybe they're in the middle of a funeral, you know, or someone just died, or maybe there's a wedding going on. Well, maybe the timing of that type of situation would call for maybe considering other options. And so, anyways, thank you for participating. That's kind of an example of what they're looking for. Again, not a lot of, there's no wrong answers, but it gives you an insight of what they're looking at as far as maybe better choices than other things. So thanks. As we go to the, in the next slide, what about the, you know, the online assessment, the job simulations? A couple things. Now, when you're asked to do this, a couple things is that, very similar. You're going to get a situation, you know, this is your job, you're a revenue agent, you're an auditor, and you have this scenario. And so they're going to provide you with all the details of this is things about your job, this is resources, sort of like some of the simulations that are in the CPA exam. When you, so you have references, whether it be your calendar, whether it be the duties themselves of the position, whether it be references of laws or research, things like that. Then you'll ask to, given a situation, use an interaction with a taxpayer. It could be a phone call, it could be a face-to-face meeting. The taxpayer, the client, will have an audio, and then you'll respond with a multiple choice question of how you want to respond, and based upon that, given back and forth, based upon what you select, then the client will respond in the applicable way as pertains to your answer. A couple things to know on number 3. You do not have to know what the position's about. You do not have to know the tax law in this case. You have to know the what works, the inside internal process of the IRS. You don't have to know that. All that information, what you need is available in your reference on the simulation itself. For example, there may be a situation where the taxpayer says, or the client says, "Hey, I want to reschedule my appointment." Okay, and the first there says, "Hey, how about can we do it on Monday night at 7 o'clock? I'm free that time, and that works for me. I don't have the kids, and that's the opening of my schedule. That works best for me." Well, that might work, but if you look at your job tour, if you look at your hours of your job itself, you would say, "Well, I leave at 5 o'clock," so that might not be the best choice because it's an okay choice, but you look at your work description and it says, "Hey, your job is from 8 to 5." They might have a situation where the client responds, "Well, what about at 10 o'clock on the 13th? We can do it then." And you say, "Sure," but if you look at if you look at the calendar itself, you realize that is on a Saturday. So it's like, okay, let's look at the calendar. Let's see what that is. Maybe they say, "Well, what about next Tuesday at 3 o'clock? And you look and you say, "Well, I have a conflict. I have another scheduled appointment." So before you answer, they're going to ask you to maybe they're looking at people who are kind of look at the big picture and, okay, what's the reference? Well, you make an appointment. Let's look at my appointment book. What days do I have available? That seems like a logical step. So they want to see if you can proceed in that manner too. The next case, and we're getting close here, folks. Just an overview of what we talked about, and the next couple slides tell you a little bit about the simulation itself, and it tells you the what scenario and the audio response of that. That's kind of generally what's about the presentation. Let's talk about what the next slide called the hiring freeze. This is something that is kind of unique right now. So as you probably know that the congressional appropriation is in essence the budget for every federal agency. And because over the last 5 or 6 years there has been quote unquote lack of funding, they've incorporated a law called the Continuing Resolution, the CR. You might hear some congressional people talk about the CR, Continuing Resolution. It's a law that says that if we don't pass the budget, you get the same dollar amount as the previous year. So we've been in a continuing resolution for about the last 5 or 6 years. And so with that, they have to take in consideration the dollar amounts for improvements, for capital improvements, and raises and things like that. So the operating income generally is reduced, and so that has affected the hiring of most agencies, with the exception of the Department of Defense and Homeland Security and some of the veterans programs, because they have received their actual budget. And so so there may not be a lot of opportunities out there, and the main reason is it's not because the agencies do not have the need for folks like yourself or with your skill set. It's just that they don't have the funding available for the training and the payment for their salaries for a whole year, or for the to bring them on board. So that's kind of the big thing. And so if Congress is passing the actual appropriations, then you'll see more and more opportunities in other federal agencies. Now keep in mind that even during this time period, that not all positions are affected. Agencies have the capability of classifying positions as quote-unquote mission critical, which means that we need these people in order to do our job. For example, with the IRS, we have seasonal people, seasonal help to process tax returns. So those are seasonal positions. Those are considered mission critical. We've had some, because of some congressional laws, we've had to implement. We've had to hire hundreds and hundreds of IT people to implement those laws. Those are considered mission critical. So there are going to be opportunities even though we are in a hiring freeze, as with most agencies. One of the best things you can do, though, after this, and those that have applied for the federal jobs, I hope you are aware of this, but within your account, there's a thing called Save Searches. It's an icon, which is the hyperlink to the parameters, like when you do a job search in the advanced search. In the Save Searches, you set the parameters, and then whenever new jobs are posted and they meet your criteria, they're going to send you an automatic email with a link to that position. So once you do all this work of setting up your Save Searches, uploading your resume, you can pretty much set back. You don't have to visit USAJOBS every week to see if there's new positions, because if you implement your Save Searches, then you can use that as a tool to get automatic job notices for any federal opportunities that are out there. So what do you think, huh? I do have a couple questions that I did receive, and I wanted to incorporate this in the slide. So maybe those might be questions that you had on your mind. So let's look at the first question. It's the what can I do to prepare? When I apply, what can I do to prepare? There are a couple of things I want to highlight here. Of course, apply. We're in the slide where it gives you the details there. Of course, apply early, because that has the opportunity so that you can go back and amend your application itself. Get your emails. All correspondence is done by emails. Sometimes they're done through USAJOBS. Sometimes they're initiated through the agency. And some of these emails are, because of spam filters and things like that, are getting directed to their junk mail account. So keep in mind that look perhaps in the junk mail, or ease up the criteria for your spam filter, and because they may be redirected there, and so you might miss out on opportunities for, like I say, an assessment invitation. No need to study. They're not going to measure your actual knowledge of your competency of your tax skills or accounting skills. You should have all the reference, especially in the job simulation. You should have all the reference of what you need to have available for the test itself. And lastly, when you're doing the job simulations, try to allocate a couple hours where you're not going to be interrupted. You're going to have like 3 or 4 days to actually do the simulation, but I strongly suggest that you do in one sitting. It could take up to 2 hours. I've seen people complete it done in 45 minutes, even less than that. But a 2-hour window is a good window where you're sure to, because it's not timed, that you should have enough time to complete your task. Make sure you have good headphones so you can hear that. There are some disadvantages of what you can refer back to if you disconnect your internet connection and then go back and do that simulation at a later time. So I would plan on a steady time of just doing it all in one setting. The next question deals with, when I have these assessments, a substantial portion of how you can be considered for an interview. How can I do well? How can I do well? Make sure that you just take your time, read everything, just be thorough. It's not rushed, and remember, there's no wrong answers. So just take your time, and that's probably the best thing. And make sure that you finish, when there's a multiple choice question like we did in the sample, make sure you're answering it. At least answer it. There's no penalty, so to speak, if you didn't answer it. And lastly, make sure you finish it by the, they're going to give you a time, you have to finish it by, whatever, Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Make sure you have some time to don't put it off and do that. I guess that's it. Let's look at the last slide here. What advice do I have that you can take with you, in kind of a summary of that? Remember, the objective is to get an interview. That's kind of where everything is even at that point. And so how can you maximize your potential? Understand that most agencies want to interview at least 3 people for every 1 position available. So even during the interview, you want to be as best as you can. So you want to receive the highest score, whether it be a military preference or those questions, those duties. Addressing each element of the duties is a big way of at least getting in the category A ranking right there. Understand that the assessments, they want to look at other things, not necessarily technical. There may be a question or two about the technical competency of the applicant, but they're trying to look at people who can make the ability to make the decision, which was the question or the objective of the question that we did in our sample. Be able to think on your feet, be able to change a situation. You're trying to execute a situation. Oh, you realize they're going to the funeral. Well, maybe you have to change your decision. Look at people with that ability. Good customer service. You can be a rule with an iron fist, so to speak, or you're trying to get that win-win situation. You want to do your job, but you also want to make it as best you can for a win-win situation. Then also, you want to also be able to do your job, serve what you're being paid to do. And so those are kind of elements that they are looking for, not only in the application in your duties, but also in the simulations themselves. So I'd like to thank you very much, and I appreciate you taking this past hour to listen. I hope it maybe you had some questions that generated with that, but thank you very much, and I hope that was a little bit beneficial. I hope you find something that could be useful if you ever consider working or at least applying for a federal opportunity.
Yeah, Chris, hey, this was great. And we're at the top of the hour, as you mentioned, and we do have several questions. So first off, let me tell everybody that we have recorded this session, and we will provide a link to you in a couple of days back to this recording. Okay, so you have it as a reference. You'll be able to see the slides and hear the commentary. Now, Chris, can you stay on for a few minutes and let us try to get through
Absolutely.
That we have? Okay, great. So this Q&A session, since we have so many, it will be part of the recording. I know many of you may have to drop off, so just know that, listen to the recording, and hopefully we'll have your answers, your questions answered there. Okay. So first off, I had a question from someone who teaches at a university for several years, and just remembers that the IRS used to go and recruit on campus at this particular college. So is much college recruiting with campus visits still done? And is it broken out regionally with specific contacts by city or by region? How would they know who to get in contact with? And also, it is probably in line with the hiring outlook over the next 12 months. So if you can give a general outlook of what they can expect on campuses for the students out there over the next 12 months and their best process, whether on campus or online.
A great question. Great question. Many years ago, we had regional recruiters that established partnerships with various schools and organizations within that region, and they were doing a lot of face-to-face contacts, whether it be career fairs or meeting with the professors or with the counselors. And because of the budgetary concerns over the past years, we have substantially, at least with the IRS, we have substantially reduced our face-to-face recruitment efforts. We've gone from basically 24 recruiters down to only a handful. And so the current person is actually myself, and my contact information can be found indirectly, so to speak. They have you can ask the recruiter on our career webpage. That is a link either through the irs.gov website or jobs.irs.gov. And in that career website, there is a link that says contact a recruiter. That would be myself. And then, so we don't do a lot of face-to-face. We're doing a lot of virtual right now, mainly because of budgetary concerns. We have not yet received our appropriation determination for next fiscal year, which begins October 1st. Personally, I'm not optimistic for 2015, mainly because it's a political year. The following fiscal year is a lot more optimism involved. It's sort of like at a horse race. We have a lot of horses in the gates, a lot of job opportunities, potential job opportunities. We're just waiting for the budget to send us off for the races. So there are opportunities, there are potential opportunities, but I don't see this happening, at least in the short term, as far as some of the career opportunities that we have for entry-level professional positions that we're talking about.
Okay, so obviously the timing is dependent upon budget, right? But what about the
budget's driving? Yeah.
Okay. So given that and understanding that, now we also take into account the timing of the academic year and the recruiting season lining up with the academic year. And let's take the scenario of seniors looking for jobs in September, October, going through a process, but maybe the jobs aren't there. I guess how should, as in this example, seniors approach that, and can they apply for positions that require bachelor's degrees when they haven't yet attained their bachelor's degree, but that's what they're trying to find a job for after they graduate?
Excellent question. Keep in mind that you have to be qualified at the time the position starts, not the time you apply, so the time it starts. So if a position starting in May of 2016, then those are the positions that you may want to consider, even though if it requires a bachelor's degree, you're going to get your bachelor's degree or 150 hours at the end of the school year. And so look for the timing. A lot of times in the job announcement it's going to say when the job starts. So that's the key. You got to be eligible at the time they start. What I strongly suggest is that you set up your saved searches for all type of opportunities for accounting, auditing, and things like that, because there are positions, say, in the Department of Defense. They are hiring a lot of accountants. They have the funding, and so there are accountants, accounting positions, auditing positions available in various other federal agencies. So we don't know when our particular ones are going to populate when we get the go-ahead, nor do I know about the other federal agencies. So setting up your parameters, and you can save up to about 10 saved searches. But if you save up, go into your account, do a saved search, set your parameters for these accounting positions at the particular entry level. That's probably the minimum things you want to do. And as far as timing with the other federal agencies, there are positions out there, depending on the location, but not necessarily all of them. The Security and Exchange, the IRS, a lot of accounting positions we have, we're not seeing a lot of opportunities, at least in the short term.
Okay. All right. I'm grouping some questions here that are somewhat similar. If you're a veteran, are you considered a federal employee for the purpose of hiring? And same question, if you're an intern, currently an intern with the government, are you considered a federal employee, and can you apply as a current federal employee?
Federal employee is determined by when people work for the federal government, they are generally classified under one of three different categories. They could be a seasonal help. Hey, we just want to help you through the tax season. Okay. They could be a term employee, or they can be what they call a career conditional. If the position itself is considered career conditional, then that career conditional employment time goes toward qualifying for being considered a federal employee. So if they're looking for experience under a career conditional criteria of the job that you had. So a seasonal employee, that's not considered federal work experience, except for another maybe seasonal employee. But if you're looking for a some positions say, hey, we're looking, I want to be considered for the internal positions. So they're looking for your work experience at that particular level as a career conditional employee. So that's kind of a key term right there. Generally speaking, they do not. Although veterans may be eligible for some of those exceptional opportunities. If you are a veteran, I strongly suggest that you go to the IRS career webpage, again, jobs.irs.gov, and there is a link to the veterans website. You can deal with our Veterans Recruitment Office, and there are some initiatives that are strictly for, and different programs, they're strictly for veterans. So sometimes there are more opportunities, there are additional opportunities that may not necessarily be posted on USA Jobs that are available for veterans under different programs, and that information can be found at our career website through the Veterans hyperlink right there. Interns are under a program called the generally interns, there are some paid internships that would automatically lead to upon completion of that, they will be offered a position with the IRS or other federal agencies. Sometimes that's going to be available if they had an internship. It's going to be stated that it has to be a paid internship, and it has to be a position that they are going to lead to a particular full-time position. So that will state in the internship itself. There are different types of internships available. Again, that information can also be found on a career webpage.
Okay, a couple of questions about age. I guess in general, the question is, are there maximum ages that are considered for certain positions?
There's a general minimum age. You have to be at least 16 for federal position. As far as maximum age, if it's a civilian position, a position that does not require criminal enforcement, specifically a position that does not require firearms training, okay, then there is no age limit. There's a federal mandate that says that in order to be hired and considered for for criminal enforcement, those are called special agents. You have to obtain the age of 37, and again, different agencies it can be lower. For example, the FBI has a 34 age limit, but the maximum you can be is age 37 at the time that you're hired, and that's only for criminal enforcement. The accountants with a gun, the people that get the Al Capones of the world. So there's an age limit for that, but for all the other civilian positions, there's no age limit at all.
Okay. So when someone's in the system and signed up for emails, one person gave an example that they've received emails regarding that she's or he is not their resume has not been reviewed, but they do not qualify for the position. So the question is, what does that mean? How can someone not qualify for a position when the resume hasn't been reviewed?
Repeat that question. I thought we were going one way, but then something else.
All right. So simply, I guess, someone has received notices that their resume has not been reviewed, but they do not qualify for the position. So
okay. Generally speaking, in my experience, I believe what this person is asking is that they've applied for a position and they just said they got the thing is that you're not qualified, you're not eligible for the position. And so what happens almost all the time is that one of two things happen. Is that this position itself is for perhaps an internal position. It's for, you have to be a current IRS employee, you have to be a current FBI employee or something like that. Those are the internal positions. And again, when you set up your criteria for who may apply, you want to keep it at the default no, and then those positions are available for the general public. If this position is for the general public and they determine not to be eligible, it's likely that the grade level of the position is beyond their educational work experience. So if they're looking for an entry-level position, it may be a high-level position, that GS scale, that slide that talks about maybe it's a GS 12 and they're looking for an entry-level position. So they're not going to be eligible for that because they don't have the corresponding experience. Those are generally the two areas. And lastly, the other area is that they have to be a U.S. citizen at the time they apply. And if they're not a U.S. citizen at the time they apply, they will get that notification that they're not eligible for that. So those are generally the three areas that would trigger that response. Now, what you can do that if in the application that the person is referring to, that they can contact the agency contact person listed in the announcement, and they can tell you specifically why you were deemed ineligible. Again, we don't, recruiters, I'm not privy to that information, the application files, but the agency contact person is, and they can tell that particular member specifically what the reason was.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. So a similar question somewhat. It's asked if GS 5 through 9 positions are entry-level pay positions. Sometimes in the announcements, there's sometimes experience level that's mentioned. So why would experience level be mentioned in entry-level positions?
Another great question. Keep in mind that you can qualify for, generally speaking, there are, it's either education alone, and that's what we talked about, the GS 5 through 9 without experience, is based on education alone. Or you could have just education itself. You have actual work experience as an auditor, or a combination of maybe a associate's degree or a bachelor's degree with education. In addition to that, if you have a CPA license, you could be eligible for those positions. And so the questions are always going to ask for your education and work experience along with any particular license. So they could say, well, you don't have they're going to ask you for the education because you could be eligible for even a higher level. There are some positions that either they could either start off as a 5, a 7, or a 9. So based upon the questions of your experience and your education, they can say, well, maybe you're eligible for a GS 7, or maybe you're eligible for a GS 5 or a 9, and that could be actually in the same announcement itself. So the application is going to ask you questions to make sure that not only are you eligible for the minimum job, but maybe the various jobs levels that are addressed in the application itself that they allow. So the job could be a 5, the job could be a 9. It could be in the same announcement for both of those positions. So that's why they're going to ask you for your experience. So if it's strictly the education itself, then you can say, I got my bachelor's degree, I got my master's degree, and then all the other experience, you say, you have no experience, and so you still could meet the criteria of qualifying for the position because of your education. So look in the job announcement, look under the qualification tab, and see what they're looking for as far as how to qualify for that particular position.
Okay, for intern candidates specifically, someone's asked about, how do you apply for that? Will job posts be very clear that these are internship positions for internship level candidates?
Yes. You can also set that criteria under advanced settings. They will say they'll indicate it's called a student position. Either a student volunteer or a student position. Sometimes the agency will incorporate that in the job title itself. But one of the criteria you can say, one of the tabs in the advanced searches, I didn't go through all the tabs, but one of the tabs you can go into and actually select, only can be considered for student positions. And so, again, student positions are going to be generally your GS 3s and 4s.
Got it. Okay. Is there a way to see your application ranking or rating after it's submitted?
Okay, once you submit, once the job announcement has closed, then you're going to get an email and status update regarding whether or not you're eligible or ineligible. And then within your account itself, within your USA job account, USA account, there is an application status tab or icon. You can hit that and look at the particular job announcement that you've applied and see what the current status is. You will receive an email regarding your ranking after the assessment period is done for all candidates, not necessarily your candidates. So you may have an application or a job that has scores and hundreds of applicants, and so until they're all done, then they will actually do the ranking. At least you'll usually have notification at that time. So you receive an email, the ranking, and that likely could be on the application status. I apologize. Usually the ranking is done through an email that's private information, and the status of where your application is in the process will be what you can find out through your USA job account itself.
Great. Okay, just two more questions.
I don't know if that answered it, but...
Oh. Sorry, Chris. What is
Sure.
the best way what's the best documentation to, I guess, verify a disability?
Within the IRS jobs career webpage, there is a couple links regarding disabilities. There is and that will give you to an email address which you are going to get pre-qualified for. The disability usually is from either from a combination of a doctor and or the state agency, and tell you what the limitations for. But all that paperwork can be considered for the disability hiring, and that is called what they call Schedule A. Schedule A as in apple. Those are considered disability hiring, and you can get pre-qualified for your disability. So when you apply, you can get be considered for any preferences for the disability hiring. But again, there's a web page or website, a link rather within the IRS career web page. Again, www.jobs.irs.gov, and then look for the disability link, and then there's information on there and contact information for that whole process. And then then the disability hiring officer within the IRS will work for you to get the proper documentation to get pre-qualified for future consideration. And that's the same as also with the veterans' preferences.
Okay, great.
So there's contact information. Yep.
No, I was just going to go to the next question. So, a lot of positions require security clearance, and so someone has asked how a person can get that clearance.
Great question. Each job has a certain level of security clearance for that position. Security clearance does not necessarily transfer from one job to another. For example, if you had security clearance at one level and you're applying for another job, you're generally going to go through a whole different process for the security clearance, an updated version, even though you had a prior higher clearance. So they're going to look at currently, when they do the background checks for the security clearance, they're going to look at your job, what kind of security clearance does require, what the extent of the background, and they're going to do it for that position, regardless of whether or not you had a prior security clearance, even a higher security clearance in another or a prior federal job. So that's not really applicable for a position that you apply. Although maybe that background check may be helpful when they're doing the new background check, they maybe have that file. But every time you apply for a new position with a different agency, they're going to look at the security clearance that's required for that particular job and then do that security clearance regardless of whether or not you had a prior security clearance.
All right. That's it. That's great. Thank you. Okay, everybody, I hope you have some terrific information you act on now. Like I said, we'll send out a link to the recording. You'll receive that in a few days. I also want to let you know, just a heads up that we have some exciting news at Accounting Fly. We've acquired a new accounting news site called goingconcern.com, and I encourage you to check it out. It's got a lot of information about accounting careers. So it's a fun read. You'll probably find it pretty interesting. But so take a look. All right. Thank you, Chris. It's fantastic. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Be well, folks. Thanks.